to tough. And it doesn't matter how young or old you are, when your mom transitions, you feel it. Your dad too, but there's something about mom. Anyway, right now I have a wonderful pleasure to introduce an amazing woman to you. I can go on and accolades and all these things, and I know that I would not even touch a little bit of all that this woman has done in her life. Besides being a wonderful professional, a mother and a wife, and a dear, dear friend of mine, she is one of our wonderful practitioners here, East Hawaii Center for Spiritual Living. Please welcome up Dr. Kasey Wilson.
Well, aloha, good morning, and happy Mother's Day. And I realized when I was preparing my talk this morning that I actually spoke here last year on Mother's Day. Yeah, the coincidence, but maybe we should make it a thing. I don't know. So many of you may not have ever seen me before or met me before, and you're wondering, how could I be a practitioner at this center? And so I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about that this morning. I think our wonderful tech folks are going to help me with some slides here. So this center is part of a global movement called the Centers for Spiritual Living that's dedicated to creating a world that works for everyone. And I have the great honor of working for what we call home office. So I work for the CSL national or international organization. And so up until now, I've been the director of professional development and lifelong learning. But I've been on the mainland since January because I'm working on a new project. And that project is CSL has just purchased their own camp. Yes. So the name of it is Camp Cedar Ridge, and our motto is Discover the Good. It's located in Vernonia, Oregon, which is about 1 hour west of Portland. It's just a beautiful place, and I've been so happy and honored to be involved with this project. I've run camps before. If any of you have been on Oahu, I was at YMCA Camp Bergman for a number of years and some other facilities, so it's an honor to do this project. So if you can, I'm going to show you a couple of pictures of it. I actually took this picture. This is a herd of elk out on the playing fields that often come in the morning, and it's really an amazing experience to have. This is a drone view of the whole facility, and that large building here is the dining hall, which is, of course, the heart of any operation. Next slide, please. This is what we call the reception barn. So one of the things that is we're able to do and honored to do there is weddings, and this is the way it looks when it's set up for weddings. Next slide. This is the actual place where the weddings take place. Next slide. These are some of the buildings. This house here is the facility that's a little bit more adult-friendly than some of the other bunkhouses and things. And the one on the left is the meeting room. Next slide. You see the pool, and next slide. And this is, so as I say, I'm happy to be the new camp director, the first camp director of Camp Cedar Ridge. So what that means to me in this community is that, you know, in addition to those other things, I am the wife of Doc Wilson, if that. And so, yeah, probably the most important thing. And so we live here. So I'm on this sort of extended deployment in Oregon. I'll be coming back and forth. Because my husband works remotely, he'll come and stay with me sometimes. I don't know how long this is mine to do, but so we're just walking it out day to day. right now, this is how it happens, and when I'm done, I'll be back, right? So that's how it's working. People keep saying, how long? And I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it unfolds. All right, I have another slide. So now I'm going to transition into our talk today. So I'm sure you are well aware that this year our theme is in global CSL is Living Everyday Wonder. And in May, our theme is emotions. And this week, the topic is fear. So I chose this because it's a great example of how sometimes we create our own circumstance, our own vision of fear, right? So sometimes fear is of our own making. So we can take that down now. We got the point, I believe, from that. So. All right, so I'm going to start with the story. We spent many years on Oahu, about almost 20 years on Oahu. And I haven't really heard this here as much as I did there, but there's a lot of talk on Oahu about Mauka and Makai, right? Because you don't know, there's no east and west. It really depends on where the mountains are and where the ocean is, and that's how you orient, which direction to go. And there was a story with my daughter where my daughter is one of those people who came into this incarnation without the pre-installed upload of sense of direction. Right. So we were at a stop sign. I was trying to decide which way to go. I was looking at the mountains, figuring out what to do, and I said, all right, let's see. There's the mountain, Japan is this way, California is this way, all right, it's a left, right? And my daughter said, Mom, nobody figures out whether to go right or left by figuring out which direction Japan is. But I tell that story because sometimes we just have to look up at the really big picture, right? Before we figure out the big picture, and then we figure out the short-term decision, the direction to go, right or left. And I know someone whose mother also did not get that installed feature of sense of direction, and she used to get lost all of the time, and the kids would say, Mom, are we lost? And she would say, no, we're not lost, we're on an adventure. Right. And I just love that approach to life. So we're going to talk about fear today, and I will say that when I began to prepare, when Rev Bev knew that I was going to be here this week, I'm actually only here, I'm here for a week because it was my birthday and Mother's Day, and we moved, and so I came for a week to help out. And when Rev Bev knew that, had asked me to speak this week, I looked up the theme, and I thought, how interesting that the people who work on the global themes would pick fear for Mother's Day. I think there's something interesting about that, and it can be, the more you think about that, the deeper that gets, right? I have a brother who's a musician, and he has a line in one of his songs, "What's behind every cruel joke? Mother's fatigue." Yeah, the deeper you go, the deeper it goes, yeah? And so, I need these now. I think that relates to that creative process, right? So when I can remember one of the experiences that I had when I was pregnant for the first time was realizing that you are on a roller coaster that you cannot get off, right? This is happening, right? Right. And there is something about that experience that does sort of change your orientation to life. So going to fear, there are different kinds of fear, right? There's fear of something physically happening to us. There's emotional fear. There's sort of fear of choice when you're thinking about doing something that you're a little afraid to do, like maybe jumping out of an airplane or something like that. And then there's the fear that something might happen. And I think those are all kind of different types of fear. When we say you may have heard this phrase, false evidence appearing real. And I don't completely agree with that, because some things are real, right? Like if there's lava headed to your farm, that's not false evidence, right? So there really are different kinds of fear. But I think the thing that they have in common is that fear is not necessarily bad. Fear is information. So what is that information telling us? We get to tell the story of what that fear means, what dialogue we're having with the universe around this emotion called fear. So we don't always have a choice about whether or not we experience fear, but we always have a choice about what the narrative that we tell ourselves around that. And we always get to retell the story. So I think about when I'm really stuck, and I call it hooked. When I'm hooked, big time, right? In fear, anger, or whatever it is, that I go through the process of an exercise of retelling the story as if the universe had wanted my best, and therefore I'm walking through this experience. And if I retell it that way, no matter how bad it is, if this is information for me, this is part of my dialogue with life. This is part of what I have chosen to walk through in this hologram, in this dimension, in this incarnation, for whatever reason. There is information that I'm having with Source. And if it is for my highest and best good, how does that change the story? Is there any way that I can see this differently? And once you start to reframe that, it does shift. You're not as hooked. You're not as in victimhood about it. You're not as only one way to see this. You're starting to see it from different places. So, there's an exercise that is often done in CSL circles, and it's called the fear to faith exercise. And again, I want to change the terminology a little bit, because faith, to a certain degree, for me, it has some wishful thinkingness to it, or a little sort of blind following, or that kind of thing. It just doesn't quite feel right in this context, and so I call it fear to truth. I know fear to faith sounds better because it's two F's, but I like the idea of fear to truth, because there's the fear of what is happening, of the experience that maybe you don't think you want to have, and then there's the truth of the lens of where you lift up your eyes and you figure out which way Japan is, right? And you say, wait, what is really happening in this hologram that we call this spiritual experience, right? And it shifts us out of that victimhood and that stuckness. And so, the Bible says perfect love casts out fear, and I would say perfect truth casts out fear. So when we're talking about fear and things that are really difficult for us to go through, whether it's fear or anything else, we don't want to spiral into getting into the law of circulation that's giving more and more fear, just like the meme that we saw. We also don't want to do what, again, is called spiritual bypass, right? Where we're just like, no, there's no fear. Lava coming towards my farm? Sure, no problem, right? We don't want to go to one direction or the other. We want to be in that nice sort of what I call green zone, in the middle of those things, where we are not avoiding and not spiraling, but we are talking. Fear is information, emotions are information. What is the conversation that I am having with the divine that is coming through the emotion of fear? Let's see. Let me find out where I am here just a second. Oh, okay, yeah. So, and in that conversation can be had in all of the various ways that we have conversations with Source. So sometimes it's meditating, sometimes it's reading a particular book that speaks to us. It could be writing, it could be singing, creating music. In what way am I communicating with life right now, and what message is it trying to bring me? And so another analogy when we talk about the upward spiral has to do with our continuing, deepening, more evolving relationship with Source and Spirit. And the downward spiral can happen when we are reinforcing those negative thoughts. The more you think negatively, the more negative things look. So what happens for me is I envision it that way, and there's kind of like a deck, if you will, at the opening where it starts to go down. So there's the upward spiral of light, and then there's that downward spiral, and there's a level spot before you go down, right? And sometimes we hear that expression, circling the drain, right? We're circling the drain, we're about to go down, we're trying to keep ourselves from going down that drain. And so for me, what I do when I feel myself hooked and I feel myself circling and I feel myself right about to go in is that I just sit down. Like I sit on that deck, and sometimes with my feet in there, right? But I'm sitting, and that's stopping that downward spiral. And in that moment, I'm talking to. I say, okay, I know this is an emotion that is giving me information, an emotion that I don't particularly want to fall into and allow to take over. So what can I do sitting right here that's going to help me to shift the conversation and go the direction that I want to go? And as I said, all of those ways, meditating and reading and writing and talking to someone. That's why we have practitioners. That's one of the reasons why we have practitioners, is that when you are having a hard time shifting for yourself, you go to someone who knows the truth and reflects that truth back to you. And if nothing else works, if absolutely nothing else works, and you're sitting on that deck, dangling your feet, the shortcut is gratitude. If you cannot do anything else, go on a gratitude rampage, right? If you've ever seen Abraham Hicks or heard Abraham Hicks, I would go on YouTube and listen to the gratitude rampage. That's a fabulous way to do it. But if you have nothing available to you, just start where you are, and because gratitude is an upward emotion, and it will shift you out of where you are stuck. So this whole talk reminded me of the line from John Denver's song, "Talk to God and listen to the casual reply." I love that. So to finish up, I just want to leave you with these two thoughts. One, fear is information. And two, we're not lost. We're on an adventure. Aloha.